Well, thank you all for praying for me, and your prayers were answered. I was able to preach both Sunday morning and Sunday night at First Baptist Landrum and didn't lose my voice at all during either of the two services. So I appreciate so very much your prayers. Also, for your prayers for me to get better, and I am getting better all the time. The medicine is working. Even though my voice is a little gravelly right now, it's coming back better each day, and put in a full day today here on the mountain. So appreciate very much your prayers. And I want to challenge you today and tomorrow. This will be a two-part series, and it has to do with the Lord's Supper. I want you to set aside your denominational teachings. I want you to put aside ritual and tradition. And I want you to do an earnest study with me on exactly what the Bible teaches about the Lord's Supper. And not what our denominations have taught us, but what does the Bible say about the Lord's Supper? Now, for some of you, that's going to be a lot harder than others. And I recognize that. And I don't want you to turn against your religion, nor do I want you to change your practices. That's not the objective at all of this study. I love my brothers and sisters in Christ in the Catholic Church. I love my brothers and sisters in Christ in Pentecostal churches and Methodist and Presbyterian and non-denominational, if there really is such a thing. But I just want you to take an honest look. Now, in order to do that, you need to know the places where the Lord's Supper is referenced. The major references, of course, are the gospel accounts as well as 1 Corinthians. So let me give those to you. Hope you'll write them down and I hope you'll look. Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 28. Luke chapter 22, verse 14 through 39. Mark chapter 14, verse 12 through 26. And John 13, 1 through 18, 1. Now, you're going to understand that better, why that has chapters rather than verses. But realistically, it covers the entire time of the Lord's Supper, as far as we can tell in John. 1 Corinthians 11, beginning at about verse 20 and going through verse 30. You may want to go further in all of those chapters and verses and all of the different references that I've given to you. But I certainly want you to look at those as a beginning point at least. The second thing that I want you to do is, after you read through those, you may want to make a little checklist. How many of those references talk about a new covenant? How many of those references talk about singing a hymn after the Lord's Supper? How many of those teach about servanthood? How many of those talk about betrayal? How many of those talk about denial? How many of those talk about improper practice of the Lord's Supper? How many of those talk about bread? And how many of those talk about wine? When you get all done, and I hope you'll really do this, don't watch my next video until you've answered those questions. But more than that, ask yourself 3 questions. When was the Lord's Supper? When should we practice it? Why should we practice it? And is there a warning to us about the Lord's Supper? Interesting questions, aren't they? You know, personal Bible study is one of the most enjoyable things that we could possibly do. And if I always just spoon feed you every devotion, you're going to miss some of the greatest blessings. As I did this devotion today, I probably spent 2 hours in research and found something I'd never seen before. It's not important, it's just interesting. It didn't change the way I feel about the Lord's Supper, nor what it represents. But it did bring an eye-opening to me about how we can so often be totally influenced by what our denominations teach and what we read into things that may or may not be there. So, once again, you can stop and start this video as often as you need to. Go back and get those references in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and 1 Corinthians. Study them over. Ask yourself those questions. Again, you may want to stop and start the video to get the questions. And then tune in tomorrow and maybe even one extra day, because it's going to take a little time to cover it all, to find the answers to the questions. Now, don't let me spoon feed it to you. Do some study for yourself. And I think you'll be blessed as God reveals to you the when, the why, and the warning that we find in the Lord's Supper. And then we compare that with what we teach in our individual churches, or what we practice in our individual churches. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.